Part 1 When everything resets, two souls rebirth. A battlefield with buildings collapsed, dead bodies everywhere and only 4 peoples left standing. A girl with long silver hair and a horn on her head stands next to a green-head boy in an outfit rugged, barely being held together, stood in front of 2 beings, one with a helmet that covers his entire head, his expression non-calculable, with the other one having an expression of complete anger towards the 2 beings. The green-head boy shout, his voice filled to the brim with anger and disgust for the 2 people in front of him. Deku, all for one, you know I'm going to win. And even if I don't, I won't be going down alone. Black tentacles wrap around the little girl as her expression turns serious. She takes the mask off the green-head boy's face before attaching it to hers. Her horn triples in size, resembling an ice cream cone in size. It starts to glow with a golden light enveloping them both. The little girl's eyes narrow in hatred and anger. Eri, words from Uncle Kachan. Dieee fuckers. The golden glow involves the green-head boy repairing his suit and making his scars almost disappear. Deku, you ready? That's when 7 colored figures surround the 2 of them, their expression serious. One for all for one, prepare to meet the 9th user. We'll finally put an end to you. In a blink of an eye, Deku's body disappears, with the only thing being left as an after image. We see a DNA strand that was previously black light up in flames before Deku's body grows black scales and 2 big wings. A black plasma blast shoots out of Deku's mouth, blasting away the blue head figure. If this gets raised by the one wearing a mask and is about to come down onto Deku, but Deku's wings flap, sending him straight up into the sky just above the clouds. Deku turns back to Eri, his expression one of sadness. Eri, Papa, I know. In order for us to win, just do it. Deku kisses Eri on the forehead like a father would to his daughter who is scared. Deku closes both of his eyes before leaning back and flying straight down, the black tentacles wrapping around them, forming a giant drill with their bodies. More of the black tentacles shoot out and stabs the ground around the battlefield before elegantly pulling down the drill straight onto the mask figure. Red spikes from a shield for the mask figure before All for One's quirks stop working completely. His eyes widen as he turns his head towards the battlefield. We see yellow goggles with a man with messy black hair and one of his eyes removed. With the goggles a small red glow. It is happening as the entire battlefield goes quiet. The only thing that could be heard is blood. It's flattering and a huge explosion as All for One gets ripped in half by the human drill. Deku's and Eri's eyes look towards the blue head figure. That's when cracking is heard as Deku's body forms black cracks, leaking out blood. Eri does her best to rewind Deku's body, repairing the cracks. Deku slowly starts to float as black whip stabs the ground behind the blue head man. A gunshot is heard as a purple and pink bullet flies right past Deku's head, hitting Shigaraki right in the heart, making him spit out blood. The black tentacles pull Deku forward, making him almost teleport. The sky starts to crackle as lightning hits Deku's hand. Deku's voice is filled with anger and sadness. Deku, one for all, 1,000,000%. Deku eclipse. Deku's fist lands straight on his head, making it crack before his body falls to the ground dead. Deku slowly stands up, his body shaking. Eri has stopped rewinding Deku's injuries, her horn not changing. Deku raise his fist in his show of victory before his hand falls down, float and black whip, bringing him towards the black-head man. Aizawa slowly sits up, leaning against a piece of rubble. Eri takes his hand and rewind the damage done to him. Aizawa lets out a small cough, getting the dust out of his lungs. Aizawa, well, you did it, problem child. We finally run, it's all over. You gives a sweet smile, a kind of smile you give somebody before delivering very bad news, but his smile seems too genuine. Deku, it's not over yet. Aizawa, why you talking like you're leaving? Deku puts his fist on Aizawa's heart before tears start to fall out of the Deku's eyes. Deku, I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be here. Deku and Eri hold hands before slowly walk to the center of the battlefield, where a lone sapling is being shined on by a hole in the cloudy sky. Aizawa tries to stand up, but his legs give out beneath him. That's when a small white bear mouse creature puts his hand on Aizawa's shoulder and shakes his head. Eri's horn grows golden, lighting up the area. Black whip wraps around Eri's and Deku's hands, linking them together. Black whip then extends into the ground and spreading out like veins, spreading out, covering everything from building to bodies. A golden light pulses through it like a heartbeat, traveling. The golden energy pulses through Black whip, bringing everything back to its previous state. Dead people resurrecting, buildings being repaired. Deku closes both of his eyes as his body begins to rip as Black whip extends across the country. It continues to extend across the oceans to the entire world, wrapping around Nomus that were sent to other countries to stop reinforcements. Deku's eyes glow with a crimson red as Black whip ripping apart the Nomu and wrapping around the bodies that the Nomus have killed. Deku smiles a sweet smile, the golden energy making him look like he's stepping into the gates of heaven. He turns to Class 1A, his voice sweet. Deku, I'm sorry, I won't be coming back to class. Deku watches as all of 1A starts to cry, but having a thankful smile. Momo, I'll keep notes for you. Izuku. Bakugo, you ain't leaving us. Deku, you just fucking can't. Shoto, I'll save you some cold sober. Deku, I couldn't have asked for a better family than Class 1A. A small sapling starts to grow as Black Whip slowly returns to Deku. It then wraps around the sapling as a giant oak tree that could be seen from space appears with green flowers that slowly fall down in the center of a rebuilt city. Everybody looks at the tree, a reminder of the greatest hero of their time. Deku feels his body light, everything cold and yet feels like he belongs. His eyes open to see old room that looks like it hasn't seen a clean in a few years. Deku then realizes he's upside down. He then hops down, his tail swaying back and forth. He looks around and sees a painting of a tall woman with long black hair, a black spiked choker, 7 piercings on each ear, golden eyes that are constantly narrowed, a tattoo on both of her arms and 2 chain necklaces, one of them having a red ruby and a demonic pentagram with a black diamond in the middle. Next to her is a short girl with white hair, red eyes and a horn on her left half side of her forehead, wearing a black cat onesie. Part 2: Funeral for 2 Heroes. We see 2 gravestones placed against a giant oak tree that passes the clouds. Glimpses of billions of people stood in front of their TVs wearing suits and addresses while watching the live funeral of Izuku and Eri Midoriya. The entire world is silent, like the earth itself is mourning the loss of the 2 heroes that saved everybody. Aizawa stunts on a pedestal in front of the 2 gravestones, him wearing his hero costume except Heidi with his hair combed straight and his goggles around his neck. His voice is sad. Aizawa, we are gathered here today to mourn Izuku Midoriya and his adopted daughter Eri Midoriya. Problem child. Was a trouble magnet for sure. Everywhere he went trouble followed. 90% of the time I didn't know if you was being suicidal, being reckless. But I guess it was a bit of both. Class 1A won't be the same without problem child, I know that much. Aizawa stops talking before walking off the stage, Miss Joke wrapping her arms around him. The rest of Class 1A get in a line from our own speeches. Bakugo. I've known Deku since we were kids, our mothers were childhood friends and we've known each other for years. He's always been a trouble magnet. I've pushed him away hundreds of times, but every time he gets back up, only stronger. I hate to say this, but he had the heart of a true hero. Shoto. I refused to use half of my power because of family, but Deku taught me it's not about where your power comes from or what it is, it's about who uses it and for what purpose. Iida. Midoriya had the heart of gold when I wanted revenge. For my brother he stopped me and helped me. Revenge isn't the answer to your problems, look forward and never look to your past, your future is what you make it. That's what he's always told us. I never knew what it meant until today. Uraraka. Whenever one of us needed help, it doesn't matter if you had a broken arm, broken leg or couldn't walk, he was there to help us no matter the situation. If only we are stronger we could have helped him instead of making him and Eri fight the war we promised to win together. Suyu. Back in the USJ attack I was stuck on a boat surrounded by villains. It was Deku's quick thinking that got us out of it unscathed. That day I learned it doesn't matter. He broke his fingers to save us and continued to fight. Momo. The first day of class Midoriya did I fitness exam almost quirkless except for the final test. What I'm trying to say is that Deku might have had a powerful quirk that outclassed all of ours, but in reality he showed me that it's not about if you got quirk on that you can always become a hero, whether that be saving people or helping a stranger. He taught us that is not about a piece of paper that you carry on you, it's not a title, it's what you can do for other people. Kirishima. I was one of the sidekicks on the raid when Deku found Eri and Fourth Overhaul. That was the most manliest fight I have ever seen. Denki. I wanted to become a hero for a harem, but the cute tortoise that having a goal is good but saving people becomes your priority. Save as many people as you can while your heart still beats. Slowly work towards your goals and don't use your goal as an excuse to do a bad things. Jiro. Eri was a sweet girl. I remember her statement when we played for her. Always loved apples, that's one thing I'll never forget about her. Every time I eat an apple. Zero. I remember teaching him how to use Black Whip. He picked up my style in 5 minutes tops. Deku was a good friend. No, he was family. That's what class 1A is, family through and through. We might come from different bloodlines, we might have different quirks, so what if we're not related by blood with family? That's how A1 is. Tokiyami. Deku was a badass. He embraced the shadows now and again, and when he does it is awesome. Sato. Deku was a good cook and I loved to share my sweets with Eri. I would turn my head for 2 seconds and all my apple-based dish would be mostly eaten. Koda. They both had a soft spot for animals and Eri left her rabbits. I'm guessing it's because her father reminder of one. Shoji. I was subconscious about my appearance being a mutant-based quirk, but Eri didn't care about it and Deku encouraged that. He told me it doesn't matter what you look like or how you sound, the quirk doesn't make the hero makes the quirk. Ojiro. At first I thought my tail was kind of useless until Deku Ed showed me that I could use it. Like a kangaroo, he showed me when your quirk resembles different kinds of animals, learn from the animals. Now I use my tail with my martial arts. Aoyama. Both of them were glittering like shining stars in a night sky. Hagakure. Yeah, listen, I'm invisible, meaning it's hard for me to be noticed, but Deku and Eri made me feel like I was visible. I thought my quirk just made it so I couldn't be seen, but Deku showed me my quirk was way bigger than I thought. He might not be with us, but he is in our hearts. That's when cries are heard across the world as the TV shows images of Deku on the news saving everybody and pictures of the two of them hanging out watching everything. The female figure is holding back her tears while the male punches the wall as hard as he can, breaking it instantly. The male figure speaks up, his brown hair and brown eyes holding sorrow and regret. Issei, if only I would have put you first, I wouldn't have lost my brother and niece. The female speaker, her blue eyes and blue hair mess stuff looking like it hasn't been kept clean in days. Her red bodysuit with black polka dots look different than it usually would, since her yo-yo has spikes on the back resembling a saw blade as a giant sword is on her back, jet black with a ladybug on the handles. Marinette, if only I went with my gut and took out Hawkmoth instead of trying to be a nice hero, I could have been here to help you. I'm sorry, but the nice ladybug is no more, so now on Hawkmoth is going to suffer. Issei, I'm going to stop holding back. Marinette pulls out a small picture of Issei, Marinette, Eri and Deku having fun under the Eiffel Tower. A draconic growl is heard before Issei sprites his dragon wings and flies away. A blue portal opens behind Marinette as she steps through, her expression one of betrayal and anger. Part 3: Rebirth and a New World of Outcasts. Deku shakes his head as long black hair flows into his face. He brushes it away and that looks at it again before realizing it's the same shade as in the painting. Deku hears panicked footsteps outside of his door. He slowly opens it to see Eri looking around. Panicked Deku's and Eri's eyes lock before Eri quickly heads in there and hugs Deku's waist. Deku pat her on the head before they sit on the bed that could easily fit all of Class 1A. Eri speaks, her voice is shaky but slightly calm compared to the situation she's in. Eri, what's going on? Deku shrugs his shoulders before getting in his usual thinking pose, but he doesn't mutter. After a while of him thinking, he shakes his head not knowing what's going on. That's when a knock is heard on the door. Deku gets her and opens it to see a 7'9" tall old man who looks like he's in his 50s with a butler suit and a tray of black biscuits that look burned except for the strawberries sliced up in it. On the tray are 2 hot cups, one filled with hot chocolate and marshmallows looking like a rainbow vomited on it, while the other is a plain black coffee. He speaks up, his voice soothing but not holding anything back. Alfred, Lady Beatrix, you're finally awake. I'm getting your daughter Eri is currently in there with you. Deku speaks up, him internally realizing his voice is very feminine but with a large dose of coldness. Deku, Beatrix, yes she is. Why? Alfred speaks again, this time his voice is a little bit more cautious, making sure not to trigger Deku. Alfred, I'll bring the both of you your morning drinks. Deku moves out the way. It's Alfred walks in, his posture straight and professional. He sets the tray down on a small coffee table in a small sitting area. Alfred grabs the rainbow drink and some rainbow biscuits on a small plate and put them in front of Eri. Alfred, for Miss Eri, 1 hot chocolate, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon whipped cream, 8 marshmallows. And they can be came with cinnamon apple biscuits. And the Lady Beatrix, 1 black coffee with 3 spoons of coffee, 1 teaspoon of Monster and 1 shot of vodka, and black chocolate biscuits with cut up strawberries. Eri looks at her drink, her jaw dropping with golden stars in her eyes. She slightly starts to drooling. Alfred sorts out his tie before walking out of the room, him closing the door behind him, and Deku just blinks before looking at the rainbow drink and then he looks at his black coffee. Eri looks at the drink. Eri, you think that is what Aizawa drunk every morning? Eri looks down at her drink before a stray falls down her face, remembering her time with Class 1A. Deku takes a sip of his coffee before leaning back, his expression non-changing but internally he's crying. Deku. Maybe he did. Eri picks of her drinks carefully and sits next to Deku. She slightly starts to cry while putting her head on Deku's arm. Eri, I miss 1A. Deku looks like the roof, has expression cold but behind his eyes are sorrow. Deku, if there was another way. Eri, I know, at least we have each other. Deku, of course we do, Snowflake. Eri, I wonder how Kota is doing. Deku raffles Eri's hair, making her expression lighting up slightly. Deku heads to his wardrobe and puts on a plain black jacket with a red stripe going from the shoulder to the bottom of the sleeve, a dark gray t-shirt, black pants and black combat boots. Deku and Eri finish their drinks before heading out of the room. Deku turns the corner to see a 4'3" girl with long blonde hair wearing a red and black jacket with 2 fake wolf ears. She wears a skirt. The girl speaks up, her voice high-pitched and slightly moody. Ren, hey Eri, want to hang out with your Auntie Rem? Deku picks her up by the back of her jacket and drops her on the floor, making her hit her bun, and she starts rubbing it, slightly decouples his eyes before walking away. Eri following Deku without even looking back at Rem. They continue to walk to getting a mental layout of the building before an axe goes flying straight at Deku and Deku catches it with one hand. Internally Deku surprised but his voice sounds neutral. Deku, seriously Rem? Rem, oh come on, you never feel an axe when you are my age. Deku's about to say something but he feels words slip off his tongue. Deku, of course I did. But I never missed. Deku flips the axe backwards so he's holding it with the head facing towards him. He throws it over his shoulder, the axe flying through the air, cutting off one of the ears on Rem jacket and hitting a family portrait of all of them square in Rem neck. Deku internally lets out a impressed whistle before continuing walking with Eri. After a while of walking they enter a huge room where the walls are covered in books, but it looks more like a living area than a library. Deku sees a 7'8" woman sat on a chair with a black dress that hugs her body nicely. Her hair is long and black, reaching just below her hips. She has a small head of glasses sitting on the edge of her nose as she reads a book. Deku sees a 5'11" chubby man wearing a suit with short messy dark brown hair with odd blonde streaks. Alfred is pouring the lady a hot cup of tea while Deku stands there, his body instinctively looking at the both of them with disgust. The woman looks up from her book and her eyes meet Deku's. She speaks up, her voice elegant but with a hint of authority. Alberto, Beatrix, you're finally decided to come down, and I see you have my granddaughter with you. Deku realizes his body has a somewhat of a built-in autocorrect for everybody else but Eri, so he decides to greet her as he would usually greet his mum. Deku, yeah, I came fucking down. Alberto, well, as usually you don't come down until either your little sister knows you or you feel like murdering somebody, so what is the urge today? Internally Deku is freaking out, but he calms himself down and thinks of it like a giant role-play scenario, and he figures out he's playing a badass closed-off goth who only cares about her daughter and is rude to everybody else, and fighting that will only be more annoying on his end. Deku, get to the point, mother. Alberto looks at the roof with a smile like somebody who wanted to be caught. Alberto, of course you can read me like an open book, dear. I have signed you up for a school called Nevermore Academy for Outcast. I've heard some things about it. Oh, don't worry, they know about the whole. What's the term we would use? The boy speaks at his voice slightly gravely but very respectful. Maximal, I believe the term was a slaughter bath. Alberto, of course, a slaughter bath. That was the term I was looking for. Eri can tell Deku doesn't know what they're talking about, and she's slightly interesting, so she decides to speak up to get it cleared up. Eri, what are you talking about? Maximal speaks like a dad congratulating his son on winning a baseball game. Maximal, right? Eri doesn't know about her own mother's little incident. Alberto speaks up, her voice sounding intrigued and having a slight hint of joy behind it, like a girl talking about her favorite makeup brand. Alberto, well, around 2 years ago, before she got removed from education, some dude decided to flirt with her and, well, let's just say didn't end well for him and all of his friends. Alfred speaker, his voice sounding like a grandpa remembering the good old days. Alfred, oh yes, I remember that day. I have to clean all the blood and guts from in between your wings and scales. Little bit nasty, but I've seen you have worse. Alberto leans forward, her voice slightly serious. Alberto, your stuff will be packed and you'll be shutting off a phone Nevermore tomorrow. Oh, don't worry, I'll look after Eri while you're in school. Alfred is hesitant, but he speaks up. Alfred, actually I have sorted it out, so Eri will be going to Nevermore with Lady Beatrix to Nevermore. Part 5 coming soon. Part 1, Welcome to Nevermore. Deku and Eri are across from his parents. Deku is studying the surroundings, his expression cold and calculated. They drive through a small town. They pull up to a castle that looks graphic in nature. The walls are covered in moss and cracks. The car pulls up to a fountain of a werewolf. The car pulls up next to a tall woman with gray hair tied up. She wears a white jacket with a pin with the Nevermore logo, white pants with black high heels that click against the floor. Deku steps out of the car, the rest not far behind. The woman looks at Deku with a look of interest. She speaks up, her voice is commanding but gentle. Principal Weems. Hello, I am Larissa Weems, the principal of Nevermore. And you are Beatrix Nightmare? Deku looks at the woman with a hint of authority. Deku, yes I am. Larissa looks at Eri and leans down close to her level, her voice softly. Principal Weems, and you must be Eri Nightmare. Eri hides behind Deku and nods slowly. Larissa stands back up straight and looks at all of them. She speaks up, her voice being more gentle. Principal Weems, well, it is nice to meet you all. I have a room for the two of you, but you currently have one roommate with another one coming later through the year. They follow Larissa through the school. She explains all the basics while Deku's eyes narrow. Eventually they get to a black door. Larissa opens it slowly. One side looks barren while the other side looks like a rainbow. Hurricane just came at blasting through, colorful teddies covering the bed, over bright objects covering the side, with a tall blonde head girl with pink and blue highlights. Larissa gestures to the blonde girl. Principal Weems, this is your roommate Enid Sinclair. Enid walks towards Deku and goes to give him a hug. Deku steps back. Enid, not a hugger. Maximal steps in to explain the situation so there's no confusion for anyone. Maximal, she's just allergic to color. Her skin breaks out into a terrible rash and her throat closes up. Red, black and white are the only exceptions. Alberto then speaks up. Alberto, well, we will be heading out. Enjoy yourself, girls. Deku watches as they leave. He stands there with his arms crossed. Eri peeks out from behind Deku and Enid looks at Eri with stars in her eyes. Enid. Oh my god, she's so adorable. A few minutes later, Eri and Enid are getting along. Deku is unpacking but his expression is non-changing. Internally he's happy that Eri has someone to hang out with. That's wouldn't Deku's eyes lock with a calendar with next week mask with prank day. Deku raises an eyebrow and points at it. Deku, what's that about? Enid looks confused before noticing the calendar. Enid. Oh, that one day a year pranks are allowed as long as they're not lethal. Eri's eyes widen as she hears what Enid sighs internally. Deku is having a mental party with ideas for pranks that are slightly lethal but non-life-threatening. Deku gets settled in before the night comes and Deku is sat on the balcony looking at the forest and at night sky. He turns back to Eri's sleeping form before a small smile creeps onto his face but then it disappears. He turns back to the forest as footsteps are heard next to him. Enid stands next to his feet and leans over the balcony looking at everything. Deku lights out annoyed sigh but it has a hint of sadness. Enid speaks up, her voice gentle and quiet. Enid, you care for her, don't you? Deku closes his eyes before speaking. Deku, yes I do. Enid's voice comes out slightly sad. Enid, you are a caring mother to Eri. Enid let out a sad sigh. Enid, only my mother was as caring as you. Deku slightly raises an eyebrow at this but immediately goes down with his expression turning normal. Deku, I want to show you something. Enid is confused but Deku picks her up, throws her on his back and transforms into his dragon form. He flies straight up and glides above the clouds. Enid stares up at the night sky. She gets a slight blush on her face but she continues to watch the beautiful sky. Enid speaks at her voice filled with curiosity and amazement. Enid, it's so beautiful. But why are you showing me this? Deku speaker in his dragon form, his voice slightly more feminine but with a hint of aggressiveness. Deku, I feel free up here. Enid is confused before feeling the warm night breeze of the summer on her skin. Deku flies low to the ground and flies above the river. After a while of flying around, Deku lunge on the balcony, returning to his normal form. Over the next day, Deku is stood in the school field. All of Deku's classes stood on the opposite side holding basketballs. Well, Deku is stood there and is having small flashbacks of the game of dodgeball he played with class 1A. A kid with massive blonde hair launches the basketball straight at Deku and he catches it with one hand. Deku sprint his arm around. He throws the ball full speed back at the blonde case. It bounces off his head and hits all of them and ending the math in less than 4 seconds. Deku slips in his pockets, walk back to his room. He sits on his bed. Deku sit there reminiscing about the good old days with class 1A. Enid walks in slightly upset and Deku raises an eyebrow. Enid launches her phone across the room and Deku catches it before it hits the walls. Enid speaks up, her voice very annoyed. Enid, I hate my mum. Deku get up and pat Enid on the back. Deku, tell me about it. Enid stops crying and looks at Deku. Enid, your parents seem nice though. Deku scoffs. Deku, I do you a favor. Deku messages Enid's parents using her phone and then hits sound. Deku hands her back her phone before sitting down. Enid looks at the message. Enid's text. I've had it with your bullshit, so what if I haven't wolfed out yet? How about instead of worrying about if I have wolfed out or something like that, you worry about your own existence? Because why is words of Linkin Park. Tired of being what you want me to be. Every step that I take is another mistake to you. So leave me alone and next time you want to say something bad, say it to my face and let's see how that goes. Enid watches as her parents go to text back but immediately stop after 5 minutes of that, repeating the text stays unanswered. Enid, okay, what was that? And I'm not complaining, I've practically what I've been wanting to say but not had the guts to. Deku just gives her a thumbs up before hanging upside down like a bat and going to sleep. Over the next week, Deku only does the main classes and ignores the optional classes. We cut to prank day of Nevermore where Deku, Eri and Enid I stood on the balcony. Deku sat there with a maniacal grin. Internally in front of Deku is a piece of paper and a stopwatch. Enid is stood next to Eri well looking at the courtyard where all the students are eating and doing their usual stuff. Eri looks at the courtyard, her expression one of fear and excitement. Eri, so can we see what this prank is? Enid stares at the area still with confusion written on her face. She missed class because of Eri's fear of the prank. Enid, okay, how dangerous could this prank actually be? Deku raises 3 fingers, puts down one and then puts down another one before clenching his face as he fires a small bit of plasma just below the wolf statue in the center. 2 seconds later, giant white sheets full blocking every exit. That's when the stopwatch goes off as paint bombs go off covering all the students in black, white and red paint. That's when, before anything else could happen, sprinklers go off spraying all of the students and the few teachers that were there, making them all start to scratch before Deku raises one last finger and points directly down as smoke bombs go off, making all of the werewolves start howling and scratching like animals. Eri stood there, surprise and excitement written on her face. Enid stood there, her arms slack against her side and her eyes wide with her jaw open. Deku looks at it like an artist looking at a masterpiece that took 50 years. Deku. First up was paint bombs. Deku stops for a few seconds, lead in the woods sinking, itching powder in the sprinklers. Deku roses one more finger, and poison ivy for scratching. After a few seconds Eri speaks up. Eri, now you know why I didn't want you leaving the dorm room, because mama can get scary when it comes to pranks, especially when those two are out. Compared to last time this was pretty chill. Enid speaker after getting over the prank. Enid, you have to let me in on next year's prank. One prank-free stages of one big outcome. By the way, what was the poison ivy for? Deku shakes his head before turning to enter the dorm room. Deku, you will find out tomorrow. The next day we see Enid sat in her class with all of the werewolves in her class wearing cones while trying to scratch a tall boy wearing the usual uniform, but a blue hat sits next to Enid looking at the only werewolf in the school not trying to scratch out of their body like a maniac. The boy speaks up, his voice filled with curiosity and concern. Ajax, why weren't you in class yesterday? And do you know what the deal is with all the werewolf students trying to scratch places? Enid leans into Ajax and whispers in his ear. Enid, Eri made me stay in the dorm room all day yesterday and play with her, and then we have my roommate's prank. An accordion to Eri, this was one of the tame over ones. Part 2. The Adams is a roommate. Everything goes well except all of the werewolf students finally getting back to normal. Only a few of them still have to wear the cones. Deku is working out in his room until he smells 5 figures coming towards the room. Deku rolls his eyes before hopping up to his sleeping place and picking up Eri. Deku's body shimmers as electricity passes through his scales, making him and Eri go completely invisible. 2 seconds later Principal Weems walks in looking around confused. Principal Weems looks around the room with confusion written on her face. Principal Weems, this is your roommate Enid Sinclair. But you do have another roommate and her daughter, but it looks like they're gone out. Enid, do you mind telling Beatrix that she has a therapy session with Miss Adams? Enid hears the door closed and turns around. She sees a short black-haired girl slightly shorter than herself, her skin a ghostly pale, her expression filled with curiosity but covered with indifference. Deku hops down from his spot with Eri looking at the new occupant of their room with curiosity. Deku walks up to the new occupant. Deku walks in front of the new occupant of his room. Deku's form is slightly intimidating, his dark colors bouncing against hers and they show of power between them. Deku speaks up, his voice full of command and authority. Deku, Beatrix Nightmare, my daughter Eri. Deku looks towards the small girl that occupies the room. Wednesday feels her body having a strange reaction to this new person. She holds her hand out for a handshake. Wednesday Adam. Deku shakes her hand before Wednesday's head shoots up. I said, eyes roll in the back of her skull. Deku holds his head before falling unconscious on the floor. We see Wednesday stood in a meeting room with individuals she could only describe as completely different, that she has never seen before and looks like no outcast recorded in history. The meeting goes on. Her only be able to hear a green-head boy's voice and the same little girl that is in the room. Everything stops before a battlefield is shown with the same kids that were in the meeting room crying as the same green-head boy walks to the center holding the little girl's hand. She watches as all the corpses around her immediately resurrect. Deku wake up in a familiar void, his eyes widening before they lock with Nana. Deku watches as all of the previous users of One for All dogpile him. A golden figure still sits on a chair made for it. Banjo speaker, his voice filled with excitement and slight teasing. Banjo, never thought we would see you again, kiddo. Deku smiles, his expression one of faint excitement. Deku, hold on, so what's going on? Last time I checked, One for All can't be sent to another body. Deku watches as all of them pull away and their expressions turn serious. Nana, that trick you pulled to resurrect everybody linked One for All to your soul. You can't get rid of us and we can't separate from you. Deku raises an eyebrow at this. Deku, okay, but isn't that also a good thing? N speaks up, his voice slightly one of panic and fear. N, yes, it is good, but it's also bad. I put it simply, unlike before where One for All was something that could be transferred, now it is part of you, meaning you could be our last wielder. All we could continue in your bloodline. Nana sits on her chair and puts her hand on her head. Nana, we'll link to your sensors shoe so you have more senses and our quirks. Kudo the speaker, his voice one of serious. Kuko, by the way, we feel something in a cave not far from here. It feels linked to us one way or another, but we can't put our finger on it. Deku's about to answer, but he wakes up on the floor. Wednesday not far behind. They take a sick day off after that incident. When they wrapping her head around that information, well, Deku is going over everything mentally with the One for All users that night. Deku leans against the railing of the balcony. Wednesday walks out, her expression serious as she stands next to Deku. Wednesday speaks up while looking at the sleeping form of Eri. Wednesday, that ability has happened to me a few times already. I've never seen a vision like that. Deku's expression turns very serious, like a commander watching a battlefield preparing for the next move. Deku, I'm guessing you saw an entire battlefield. I'll explain. Deku explains everything from the history of One for All to the history of Quirks, his reincarnation into this world and his life before this one. Through the story, Wednesday's expression softens by millimeters. Wednesday, why are you telling me this? Deku spreads his wings as small green sparks are come off his body as his veins glow with a purple and green lines. Deku, we both know you would have gotten out of me one way or another. Wednesday then remembers the tree from her vision. Wednesday, what's your opinion on heroes sacrificing themselves to win? Deku Luxor Wednesday before pointing his head up to the sky, his expression one of sadness but with a huge amount of resolve behind it. Deku, there's so many stories where the hero gives up his life to save the day. Because of their sacrifice the good guys win the survivor's chair and everyone lives happily ever after. Deku's voice then goes sad like somebody living from experience, but the hero never gets to see that ending. They never know if their sacrifice ever made a difference, if the day was really saved. In the end they just have to have faith. Ain't that a bitch? Wednesday looks at Deku before speaking up. Wednesday, so why did you? Deku turns around and faces the dorm before leaning his back against the railing and looking up. Deku, I ask myself that every day. What if I just let the world go back to normal, let all the dead stay dead and slowly rebuild? But then I remembered me and Eri gave up our lives for all of our friends who were on that battlefield with us, for everybody who died at the hands of All for One in that final battle. And as long as I have my daughter by my side I don't care what happens. Enid slowly starts crying but trying to keep quiet. The next day Deku is sat in a room with a lady in front of him with Wednesday next to him. The lady keeps asking him questions trying to get him to mellow out, but Wednesday gets up to go to the bathroom. When the lady looks back to where Deku was sat, all she sees is empty air. She looks around uninvisible next to Wednesday in the back room before Jackie watches a district hand. Deku raises a slight eyebrow before Wednesday picks the lock on the window and climbs out. Decor immediately follows, but instead of taking the gutter pipe to get down he just hops down, landing without a sound. They both look at each other before walking to the closest coffee shop that can see a tall round head boy trying to fit a coffee machine. Deku Wednesday walk Saturday. That's when Deku notices the instructions are in Japanese. He flips the instructions over to see a Welsh version. The brown head boy wearing an apron speaks that, Tyler, no offense if you're here for any kind of espresso or coffee, yeah you're gonna have to wait, I get this thing fixed. Wednesday looks at the instructions before looking at Tyler. Wednesday, we can get it fixed. Tyler looks at Deku and Wednesday. Tyler, if you can somehow get this thing working I'll give you 2 drinks on the house. Deku hops over the counter while looking at the instructions. He grabs an 8mm spanner and fixes it up within 5 minutes. Deku looks at the instructions before handing them to Tyler. Deku, one side was Japanese, the other side was Welsh. Wednesday and Who take a seat after putting in their orders. A few minutes later Tyler walks back with both of their drinks. Tyler sits down next to them and starts trying to get to know them. Deku ignores him but internally is curious why he smells like human and outcast blood. Tyler tries to get to know the both of them. Tyler keeps trying to talk to Deku but then he gets pulled over by somebody and he reluctantly goes to help them. A minute later 3 people walk in wearing pilgrim outfits. They walk towards the counter but then see Deku's and Wednesday uniform. They look at it disgusted before knocking over Deku's coffee. Deku gestures to Wednesday that they should get going but then one of the guys put their hand on Deku's shoulder. Deku hears the voice of the leader. Background 1, where do you think you're going, free? It's too bad you don't have any more freaks with you because we have number you 3 to 2. Deku starts getting the small flashbacks of his middle school days. Deku grabs the boy's arm before snapping it cleanly. He grabs the boy's hair before smacking it against the floor. Deku pops his shoulder before grabbing the head of one of them before whacking it to the other 2 people and grabs them by the head and slams them to grave. Deku and Wednesday head out of the coffee shop. Principal Weems stands there, arms crossed. Deku and Wednesday look at Principal Weems on their way back to Nevermore. Deku sees a car crash and Deku gets a strong scent of fresh spilt blood. Over the next few days Wednesday keeps trying to escape at the festival. Deku is hanging around with Wednesday as Enid and Eri hang out. Since Deku it silently follows Wednesday's attempt to escape, then he watches a telekinesis pin her to a tree before getting attacked by a giant creature. Deku immediately rushes at the creature before dropkicking it with 5% of One for All. The creature gets sent into a tree, crushing into it before the massive creature could attack. Deku shoots a plasma blast at its leg, making it stumble before running away. Deku hears footsteps and immediately grabs Wednesday and picks her up before Wednesday could say anything. Deku wraps his wings around her and goes completely invisible. That's when some police come checking the area and sees the dead outcast. Wednesday silently watch just from the top of a tree. After a while the area gets closed off as Principal Weems shows up and looks at the student. After a while of Wednesday writing everything down in a black leather journal, they sneak back off to the festival. Deku leans in to whisper to Wednesday's ear. Deku, we should check the library to see if we can find what that creature was. Wednesday whispers back. Wednesday, finally someone who has good detective skills. Part 3. Two great minds think alike. Later that night, Deku and Wednesday are going through monster journals trying to find anything resembling that creature from the woods. Enid decides to come out of her shell and take a look. She has a look at a picture that Deku drawn of the creature. Enid speaks up, the voice filled with a slight hint of curiosity. Enid, I swear I've seen that creature somewhere. Enid heads to her side of the room and looks through her staff. She then pulls out a journal and hands it to Deku. He goes through it and sees it's Ajax's notebook. She's a clear image of the creature but nothing else about it. Deku speaks up, his voice having a slight hint of respect. Deku, the creature was a hide. Deku hands the notebook back to Enid before speaking up. Deku, copy everything about monsters from that. Enid gives Deku a salute while Deku gestures for Wednesday to follow him. Wednesday climbs onto Deku's back. The Deku spread his wings before hopping down using them as a makeshift parachute. He heads to one of the statues inside of a tunnel and snaps his fingers twice. The room opens to reveal a very old library. Wednesday and Decor immediately splitter. Deku spread his wings and head as high as he can and check the top shelves. That's when they look around the area and Deku sees a safe. Bing climbs out of Wednesday's bag before cracking at the safe. When it opens, Deku immediately grabs the book and scans through it. A minute later, Deku finally finishes it and he hears footsteps. He immediately picks up Wednesday and Think hops on his shoulder. When they keeps quiet but internally she's fighting herself with some emotions she's never felt before. When they get back to the dorm, Deku finally puts Wednesday down before Deku grabs a piece of paper and write down everything that was in that book about hides. Wednesday takes the piece of paper and start looking through it for any information that could benefit them. That's when Deku remembers the part about hides having a master. Deku speaks up, his voice filled with a slight hint of intelligence. Deku, heights need a master to survive, so we got to figure out that the master has cut them apart and you can take them down as easily as that. Wednesday looks over the information that Deku gathered before nodding her head along. Enid then places a new book on Wednesday's desk. Deku looks at it to see a bunch of monsters and species he's never seen before. Deku sees Aries' horn starting to glow faintly. He walks up to her and brushes her hair out of her face. Deku starts to sing, his voice low and soothing. Deku, aheu, aheu. 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 I was left to my own devices. Many days fell away with nothing to show. And the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love. Gray clouds roll over the hills bringing darkness from above. But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like you've been here before? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? We were caught up and lost in all of our vices. In your pose as the dust settled around us. And the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love. Gray clouds roll over the hills bringing darkness from above. But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like you've been here before? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? Aheu, aheu. Aheu, aheu. Aheu, aheu. Aheu, aheu. Oh, where do we begin? The rebel or our sins? Oh, where do we begin? The rebel or our sins? And the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love. Gray clouds roll over the hills bringing darkness from above. But if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? And if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like you've been here before? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? How am I gonna be an optimist about this? If you close your eyes, does it almost feel like nothing changed at all? Aheu, aheu. 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 Deku finishes the song while kissing air on the forehead, making her horn stop glowing as a small smile creeps onto her face. Enid speaks up, her voice quiet, trying not to wake up Eri. Enid, I didn't know you could sing, Beatrix. Deku walks back to his spot and continues going through papers. Deku, it helps with her nightmares. Wednesday feels her cheeks heat up but hides it behind her usual expression. Over the next few days, Deku finalizes a club with him, Wednesday and Enid. Deku and Wednesday are getting slightly closer and Enid is feeling slightly jealous and keeps trying to hop between them. She's confused now and again. Wednesday goes off with Thing to do their own stuff. Deku figures out something but keeps it to himself since he's not 100% sure. We see Wednesday, Deku, Eri and Enid sat inside of a coffee shop. Tyler brings them all drinks but then Deku notices his limp and smells burnt flesh. Deku speaks up while pointing his finger at Tyler's ankle. Deku, nasty burn. Does it hurt? That you can science Tyler's body type at dimension of his ankle. Wednesday at leaves the coffee shop to do her performance at the statue. Deku branches back at Taiwan, his expression turning serious since he can smell his own plasma burnt into Taylor's ankle. Deku pulls out a piece of paper, write on it, then slide it to Enid. Enid looks at the piece of paper in confusion before opening it. Deku, the hide is Tyler. I hit the hive on its right ankle with a plasma block. I can smell the plasma of him and it's at least 2 days old. Enid looks at Tyler and writes down in her journal. That's when this your big muscular dude walks in and looks at Eri, mumbles under his breath, extra, filthy outcasts. Deku's tail wraps around his leg and pulls it from under him, making him slam his face against the floor. Deku picks up Eri and walks out, Enid following him. When Deku had some statue, he sees it melting with Wednesday continual playing her cello. Enid walks up to Wednesday while chatting excitedly. Eri looks at Deku, her expression is serious but looks adorable. Eri, so which one can be my mama? Deku looks at them both, his expression slightly sad. Deku, Eri. Now it's not a good time. Besides, Enid has Ajax. And Wednesday is more or less interested in love than Aizawa was. Eri goes quiet but silently nod before Deku walks to Wednesday. That night Deku is looking over the forest. He spreads his wings and flies out to occasion the one for all Wheeler's holding to go. When he gets to the cave, when he gets her, he sees the walls covered in ancient writing. Thank you. Runs his fingers along it before a soft glow happens in the cave before it dies down the hill. Looks around confused before realizing apart from that nothing else happened. Deku flies away. Part 1, Becoming More Dragon. A few days has passed since Deku found out Tyler is the hide, but he has no leads on who the master. Enid is keeping it quiet from Wednesday. Eri and Enid are playing. Deku and Wednesday are looking at the clues that they have found on the hide and its master. Deku's expression is filled with indifference and annoyance. Deku, fuck, this is annoying. 20 canadents for the master. Deku spreads his wings while holding his shoulder as a scale grows on his back on a weird angle. Deku grabs the scale and rips it out painfully. Wednesday looks at Deku ripping out his scales and raises an eyebrow. Deku looks at Eri and speaks in a calm tone. Deku, Eri. I'm going to have to go away for a little while. I want you to stay with Wednesday and Enid. Eri looks at Deku from playing with some toys, her voice slightly sad but understanding. Eri, okay mama. Deku quickly ruffles Eri's hair, is about to walk out of the law, but he stops and looks at Enid and Wednesday. Deku, don't take your mother's shit, Enid. Wednesday, I'm calling you in charge of Aries because I know you're the most sensible one. Deku walks out of his room and heads to one of the towers of the school. He quickly flies out into one of their clock areas. Deku turns into his dragon form, walks up to one of the giant metal beams in the center. He wraps his tail around it and wraps his wings around his body. He closes both of his eyes as his body begins to completely relax and go in a hibernation-like state. Deku wakes up in his regular body inside of the vested round. He comes face to face to a black void and sees Beatrix standing there looking indifferent about the situation she's in. Deku's pizza, his voice filled with confusion. Deku, so you're my buddy's original owner? Beatrix nods and speaks up in her emotionless tone. Beatrix, yeah, well, I don't quite frankly give it down. As long as you're looking after my daughter, I don't care. Deku looks around in confusion before speaking up. Deku, swear the others. Beatrix shrugs before looking at Deku. Beatrix, well, it looks like your body is going through your dragon change, meaning we'll be in here for around a few weeks, at most a month at best. Deku blinks, and inside of a dark forest, but he can still sense he's inside of the vestige realm. Jacques' senses immediately sharpened as he hears wolves, deers, rabbits and all kinds of creatures and insects surrounding the area. Looks around in complete confusion. Beatrix's voice rings out in Deku's head. Beatrix, simple, hunt down every creature in here before your body has finished adapting. Deku looks at his body to see he's in Beatrix's body and completely naked. Deku immediately transforms into his dragon form, but unlike before. His body is more streamlined and taller, his thick black chest, fur-pointed horns that slick back, his wings are slightly shedded but right with the wedding, the bottom part of his paws are right with black clothes, his neck is a dark red with his tail fins sharper and resembling a spiked fish with a mane of the going from the top of his head right down to his back. Deku spans what seems like a few hours inside of the vestige world, getting used to his new body. His emotions become way more sealed. Part 2, An Angry Mother Dragon. Deku is doing his usual hunt inside of the vested realm. That's when Deku hears a little girl screaming. Deku's eyes open inside of the real world. He lets out a deafening growl before shattering the window of the clock tower and leaping straight out of it in his dragon form. We see a ballroom filled with students from Nevermore wearing dresses and suits. The sprinklers are going off, covering all the students in blood. Eri is killed up into a ball, having a miniature panic attack. Enid holding Eri in her arms. Trying to calm her down while growling at a tall black kid wearing a casual black suit, the door shutters as a 10-meter-tall dragon rushes in and lets out an ear-shattering roar. Everybody stops and looks at the dragon, Wednesday immediately realizing it's Deku. Deku sees the boy who Enid is having a death stare match with. Her fangs elongated. Deku slowly walks up to Eri and gives her a soft lick on her head. She somewhat snaps out of it and her eyes widen when she sees Deku, but then Deku looks towards the boy and slaps him across the room with his tail. Enid speaks up, slightly scared but with a hint of red on her cheeks that is covered by the blood. Enid, it was normies pulling a prank and she just went into a panic attack. Deku immediately walks to the fire escape and breaks the door to see 4 kids the same age as him stored next to a water truck. Deku smells fresh pig blood in it before looking at them and letting out a growl. Deku flaps his wings and immediately picks up all 4 of the kids with his claws and flies straight up with them. Deku hears the kids scream out in fear. Deku flies full speed close to the ground and then drops them. He hears a satisfying snap coming from a few of the kids' legs. Deku leaps his front up before leaning down and letting out an ear-shattering roar. Deku watches as they shake in fear and piss themselves before passing it out. Deku looks down at them before heading back to the ballroom and picks up Enid by the back of her dress like a mama cat picking up her kittens. Deku drops Enid and Eri off in their room before hearing a scream from the forest. Deku fires a small plasma blast at the door handle, making it turn bright red before growling at Enid. Enid speaks up, her voice slightly shaky after what just happened. Enid, I'll keep an eye on her. You gon' see what that was. Deku head to the window, opens it and leaps off the balcony before flying to the area where he heard the scream. When did you get there? He sees the boy that usually hangs around with bees unconscious and bloodied up, with Wednesday looking around trying to find something. Deku sniffs the earth and smells Tyler's scent all over the bloodied kid. Wednesday speaks in her usual tone. Wednesday, it was the hide. Track it down and we might be able to find the master. A bolt of lightning hits Deku as his body goes completely invisible and Deku rushes off into the sky tracking Taylor's scent. Eventually Deku sees the hide turned back to normal, revealing Tyler in messed up clothes stood in front of a woman wearing red boots, orange hair and pointed glasses. Deku remembers she is the only normie teacher to ever teach at Nevermore, Marilyn Thornhill. Marilyn Thornhill speaks to Tyler in a very annoyed tone. Marilyn, meant to go after the Adams. We almost got enough stuff any day now, we just got away for the full moon. It's a good thing that girl did have a panic attack, as I would have been busted, it would have been on you. That's when red lightning sparks from Deku burning through the trees. Tyler quickly transforms into his hide form and then rushes at Deku. Let out a very deep growl that echoes for the entire forest. Tyler's instincts are telling him to run. That's when a bullet hits Deku straight in the eye. Deku tries to see but the blood covers both of his eyes, blinding him for a few seconds. Deku shakes the blood out of his face and sees both of them gone. Deku walks back to the room. Wednesday no longer in the spot where Deku saw the boy. Deku jumps in through the window as Wednesday it sat on her bed looking at all of the information. Enid speaks up while stroking Eri hair while she is in her bed sleeping peacefully. Enid, sorry I couldn't calm her down sooner, it never should have trusted a normie. Deku lies down on the floor. They notice one of Deku's is destroyed. Wednesday grabs a pair of tweezers from her drawer, walks up to Deku and sees a part of a bullet sticking out of the corner of his eye. She grabs it with the tweezers and rags it out. Deku lets out a soft growl as his eye slowly begins to regenerate. After a few minutes of his eye fully regenerating and the blood being removed from his face, Deku transforms back to normal, his body slightly more muscular and his chest slightly bigger. Deku walks to his staff and puts on a simple outfit. He speaks up, his voice very annoyed and angry. Deku, Tyler's the hide. Marilyn Thornhill is his master. They have something big planned but I'm not sure what. So how long was I out? Wednesday speaks up while looking at their boards. Wednesday, around a month. You missed the parent meeting and you just made it in time for that shit show of a ball. And Eri has been safe with no issues except for that one. Deku deals a weight off his shoulder but feels a huge sense of worry about Eri since she hasn't had a panic attack like that since the first night she was living with him. Deku gets a black blanket and puts it over Enid's. You then sits next to Eri and gently strokes her hair. Part 3 Dragons Meet and the End of a Master. Deku leans against the headboard, his eyes never leaving Eri's sleeping frame. Deku's throat lets out a soft purring-like sound but his expression is still one of softness and coldness. Decor notices small bruises on Eri's wrist. Decor's slight pouring changes to a soft grill. Enid speaks to voice slightly shaking in panic and worried. Enid, please calm down. Beatrix, that was because of my mother thinking that she was mine, and since you isn't exactly a werewolf. Well, she wanted me to send her to an orphanage or something since my mother's kind of a werewolf supremacist kind of bitch. And she fall it was mine, and Wednesday's making her even more against her. Deku growls, stops, speaks up, his voice gentle. Deku, thanks for looking after. Wednesday grabs Deku's collar of his t-shirt and kisses him passionately. Deku sit there completely confused. When Wednesday pulls back, Deku's lips are black. Deku sits there completely confused. Enid blinks twice before speaking up. Enid, what was that? Wednesday licks her lips slightly before sorting herself out in her usual nonchalant posture. Wednesday, your mum told me after your whole shedding cycle your heat seasons come around and you kinda need a meet and my mother hates you, you're never so perfect for me. Deku a few hours later declared back in the stage world in front of Beatrix. Beatrix speaks up in her nonchalant tone. Beatrix, listen, we both know our personalities are colliding. 1 second you like me, next second you'll like Deku, so the real question is which one is taking over. One for all going to stay with us either way. Deku remembers Eri's panic attack and he had a clear shot of ending both of them in a snap but didn't because of his old hero code. Deku speaks up, his voice filled with conviction. Deku, I've been holding on to the past hoping one day I find a way back to my world, but it looks like Izuku Midoriya died on that day and I became Beatrix's nightmare. Deku and Beatrix shake hands before Beatrix's soul turns into black and red box and gets absorbed into Deku's body. Deku wakes up in his bed with Wednesday cuddling up next to him. Author's notes: from now on I'll be referring to Deku as Beatrix. Beatrix wakes up holding her head. Beatrix stands up before stretching as all of her joints start popping like bubble wrap. Beatrix walks up to Eri and gives her a slight kiss on the forehead before heading out the room. I'm heading this straight to one of the classrooms. That's when Beatrix sees Marilyn Thornhill chatting on a phone. Beatrix shoots a plasma blast straight at the phone, melting it instantly. Marilyn Thornhill speaks up, her voice slightly shaking in fear. Marilyn, Beatrix, I'm not sure I have you in my class today. Beatrix speaks up, her voice serious. Beatrix, cut the bullshit. You're the hide's master. Marilyn Thornhill, her voice because more scared and panicking. Marilyn, what are you talking about? I ain't a hide master. Beatrix spread her wings and her tail wraps around Marilyn Thornhill's leg and snaps it before ripping it off. Marilyn Thornhill lets out a scream that could be heard from the entire school. Weems comes rushing in, very confused but also filled with panic, with a few other teachers right behind her. Weems speaks at her, voice slightly raised but also very confused. Weems, Miss Nightmare, what is going on here? And why did you rip her leg off? Beatrix spits on the ripped off leg before walking straight to the desk and ripping open a false bottom to reveal a 1911. Beatrix slams it down on the desk before removing the mag and emptying it. Weems looks at it confused before Beatrix pulls out a bullet and casing and places it next to them, the bullet covered in blood. Weems speaks up, her voice slightly more on edge. Weems, explain. Beatrix speaker the first words out of this entire encounterment. Beatrix, last night one of our students was attacked by Hyde Wednesday. Much to make it there the kid survived, but the Hyde side was still fresh, so I tell the scent I found this bitch and Tyler, the same one from the coffee shop. At first I thought it was a coincidence they happened to be talking right after the Hyde attack, but then I will take you back out little while to the first Hyde attack where another one of our students died. Yeah, I shot the Hyde with a plasma of last on its right ankle. 2 days later me, Wednesday, Eri and Enid went to the coffee shop. Tyler was limping and I could smell my plasma on him. See, dragons can smell their own prey from miles away, and when a dragon hits you with its fire breath or its breath attack it can smell it from miles away. Since that day I've had Tyler on my watch list and we couldn't find the master until last night where this bitch shot me straight in the eye. It's too bad, dragons are too hard to kill. Marilyn Thornhill speaks up, her voice very defensive. Marilyn, she's lying, I sweat I have nothing to do with the Hyde attacks. Beatrix pulls out some documents and places them right next to the gun. Weems walk over to the documents and her eyes widen before going serious. Weems, usually I would think that you were telling the truth, but this paper is exact documents of every 1911 holder in our small town. You know how many there are? 4, and each of them have a serial number on both guns and bullets, and they're the exact same. Mrs. Beatrix, I am sorry for doubting you for a few seconds until you showed this evidence, but when did you find time to check out the gun users? Beatrix slightly scarfs before speaking in a bored tone. Beatrix, that part is simple. That fairy pitched you took me and Wednesday to. Yeah, I went back a month ago, dead shot by a 45 ACP underground. 10 guns in the world that shoot 45 ACP, so I just needed to limit that, and the only one that is sold in this small town is 1911. Beatrix watches as all of the teachers' eyes widen, then Beatrix walks out and heads back to her room. Beatrix still has a slight bad feeling about that plan Marilyn Thornhill was talking about but pushes it to one side for the minute. Part 1: A Battle in Old Friends. Beatrix walks into the room and sees the over-occupant staring her down. Enid speaks up, her voice slightly careful but very concerned. Enid, you know that was reckless, right, going in alone? Wednesday speaks up, wearing tactical gear and a black bodysuit. Wednesday, when are we going after the Hyde? Beatrix speaker, a voice very serious. Beatrix, I lost his scent a few hours ago. Wednesday looks slightly down, but the expression never changes that day everybody spends it chatting and all the werewolves spend it getting ready for the full moon. Beatrix is on edge since this is exactly what they were talking about. The sun begins to set when they look into slightly concerned, but it is buried by her usual and motionless state. As soon as the sun goes down over the horizon, the sky tones a brilliant starry one with no clouds in sight, but then the once peaceful night's air turns crimson red as a pillar of red light shoots from a monastery not far from Nevermore Academy. Small portals start appearing through the school as creatures of unknown origins start rushing out and attacking the students. Beatrix is about to warn Eri to get in cover, but she is stood there holding a high-powered sniper rifle like a pro. Eri speaks up, her voice very serious but sounding adorable. Eri, I don't run from a fight. That's when a giant creature smashes through the window and roars at them. The creature's main body is black with shapes unknown to the human eye. Before it could attack, a radio with 5 black spots on each of its sides wrap around it and then slice it into pieces. Marinette lands on the balcony looking confused. Eri let out a enjoyed squeal while running to Marinette and giving her a giant hug. Eri, Auntie Marinette. Marionette eyes widen before they fill with tears and she hugs back. Marinette, hold on, if you're here then does that mean? Beatrix leans against the wall, her expression nonchalant but with a hint of amusement behind it. Beatrix, Marinette, it has been a while. Marinette blinks twice before sorting herself out and get in a serious mood. Marinette, explain later, right now we have things to deal with. Beatrix gives her a nod before turning into her dragon form. Everybody stops, including the monsters, when a guitar is heard playing through some speakers. They all look to see a man wearing a trench coat with a bright red goblet for the green gem on the back. A creature runs rack towards it and goes to swipe. Issei speaks at his voice full of enjoyment as he pulls out his shotgun. Issei, click click boom. He fires the shotgun. Unlike the usual bullets, red sparks of pure energy fire out of the shotgun. Marinette immediately dropkicks one straight into the ground before stomping on its head, killing it. They both give each other a nod before Beatrix lands on the ground next to them with a psychotic grin. Marinette decides to clear the air before any confusion could come between them. Marinette, Issei, Beatrix aka Izuku. Issei, Beatrix a nod before that the three of them rip apart the creatures in the matter of seconds, but for every one they destroy 4 more take its place. All of the faculty and students of Nevermore watch in surprise. Beatrix turns back to a human form before lightning starts sparking in her hand as she raises it in the house air and slams down it. Following her hand, the sky begins to crackle with lightning and strike down in a straight line, hitting any creatures in front of her. Beatrix walks to a breathing monster and put a hand on its head as black lightning get to absorbed from the monster into her body as a huge pulse of energy shoots out, shocking all of the monsters before making them all turn from what they were doing to attack her. The same electricity forms in her hand before she gets in a pitching stance and throws her hand in an arch. As soon as it gets in front of her, a tornado of lightning starts forming and brushes through the hordes of monsters, ripping them apart and frying them for me inside out. Issei gives Beatrix a nod before charging up a blue orb in front of him and punches it full force. As soon as his fist collide, the orb of energy cracks and explodes in a force of explosive power, wiping out everything in a straight line for 800 meters. Marinette spins a yo-yo in her hand before throwing it in the air as a giant one-handed long sword appears and she swings it like it's a stick, but the blade slicing through them like a hot knife through butter. Beatrix gives a nod before they headed towards the temple. As soon as they get there, it is an old monk's temple, except with all of the statues being demonic in nature. As soon as they get there, the ground begins to crack as 2 pits form of red energy swirling like a vortex. Beatrix raises her hand and points 2 things to her left. Marinette nods and hops straight in, with Issei doing the exact same, but with the other one. Its screams could be heard from the portals as Beatrix slowly walks up to see 3 individuals, 2 of them looking like complete demons while the third is a hide. Beatrix rolls her eyes before slowly walking up. As soon as her foot touches the step, a huge pulse of energy shakes the entire forest as Beatrix slowly stands up. Her body male and muscular. Deku looks at his old body with all of his familiar scars. Next to him floats all 8 of the spirits of One for All, with Beatrix being in her own body standing next to him. The biggest demon speaks that up, his voice very distorted, like existing in 2 realities at the same time. Demonic entity, how is this possible? That was supposed to separate your body and soul. Deku speaker is that dark green hair with black highlights brushing in the non-existent wind. Deku, you want to know why? Because I'm Izuku Midoriya, 9th wheeler of One for All. Beatrix looks at Deku, giving him an impressed nod of approval. Beatrix transforms into her dragon form and lets out a raw. Deku watches Tyler quickly panic and run away. Deku snaps his fingers as a bullet whiches past his ear and hits Tyler right through the leg as a second shot not even a second later rings out as a right in the spine, paralyzing him and knocking him out. Both of the demonic entities look at Deku before letting out a raw. The battlefield shakes at each step of the demonic entities as they seem to teleport right in front of Deku. Deku immediately ducks before charging 98% of One for All into his whole body and takes his foot straight up cracking the entity's jaw before sending it into the sky like with shoots around the entity's body. I'm transit straight into the ground. Deku sees in the corner of his eye Beatrix fighting the other entity like a predator fighting another predator. Pure chaos and animalistic rage. The demonic entity fighting Deku slowly stands up as a giant two-handed battle axe appears in its hand as it uses it to stand up and then swings it straight down. Lightning begins to crackle as the axe hits the ground, splitting it as a huge shock wave of debris and lightning bouncing between it gets sent towards Deku. Deku pulls back his fist and throws a punch. Deku screams from the bottom of his lines of pure excitement, "Deku, Detroit Smash!" Deku's punch stops at just arm's length, but the wind pressure from it creates a huge shock wave and blasts the debris and lightning back, damaging the entity before it could say anything or do anything. Deku practically teleports right in front of it, a light blue strip of light coming from his hand stopping and moving slightly 8 times. Black whip wraps around Deku's arm, forming a giant blade spike. Deku lands a firm hit straight into its stomach as the blade pierces right through it. It lets out its defiant scream of pure agony before it tries to attack Deku, but Black Whip begins to grow inside of it and stab out of its body over 100 times. The thing drops dead before Deku drags his arm out as Blackwig enters his body again. Deku looks back to Beatrix, who is struggling against the other demonic entity. Black Whip forms a giant axe head on Deku's leg. Icy practically teleports right on top of it and swing his foot, decapitating it. The same energy pressure could be felt as Beatrix's body becomes one again. Looks at her body and looks at the aftermath of the fight. That's when a black crystal appears as Marinette and Issei climb out of the portals, then covered in a scorching black blood. Beatrix walks straight up to the crystal and punches it full force. A dust cloud appears as the crystal slightly cracks. All of them hit again full force as a slightly bigger crack appears. Beatrix transforms into a dragon form. Alright, so lightning begins to crackle across her torso fins, and as lightning begins to strike her on the back, continuous flow. Marinette holds her sword art, the lightning bouncing between the scales from the Beatrix's back and her sword as Issei prepare another powerful explosion. They all hit their attacks both force at the exact same time without even saying a word. Reality itself seems to shift as the Flash and the free unique entities hit it all force as the crystal begins to crack as a huge pulse of energy is felt as the sun begins to rise through the temple's doors. Beatrix, Marinette and Issei sit in the ruins on the stairs looking over as all the monsters begin to return to dust as the sun hits them. A few of them try staying in the shadows but then get quickly dispatched by the students of Nevermore. Wednesday, Enid and Eri make their way to the ruins before seeing the three of them just sat there slightly exhausted. Enid speaks up, her voice very cheerful. "Enid, I finally wolfed out. Now how do you not know each other and how comes you free appear just as that begins?" Wednesday's pizza, her voice unusually cautious. "Wednesday, I agree, explain." Beatrix speaks up, her voice her usual flat tone. "Beatrix, you know those people I was telling you about who's like my siblings? Well, these are them, Marinette and Issei." "And yes, Enid, I know you are awake as dropping." Issei speaks up, his voice curious. "Issei, so what's the deal? Would you be in a girl and well, your two roommates?" "Oh, we don't worry, we already have cover stories and out if we happen to have to stay in this world, but we'll try and stay away from you as much as possible so we don't ruin your reputation." Beatrix spends her next few hours explaining everything from the second of her death as Izuku do everything that happened since she came to this world. Eventually they all head back to Nevermore. The walk peaceful compared to the bloodbath that happened mere hours ago. Eventually they make it back to Nevermore. The rest of the day is spent sorting out everything. Part 2, Meeting Future In-Laws. The halls of Nevermore acquired like even the air itself is morning. Every student and faculty member stand in front of a beautiful yet depressing gravestone of one Larissa Weems. Every student stands there while every teacher gives a speech. Some of the students' parents are there also giving speeches. As soon as the coffin hits the ground inside of the grave, Beatrix takes Eri out of there to a large pond located just outside of Nevermore's walls. Marinette and Issei sit up the pond, their legs swinging, skimming the top of the water. Eventually Wednesday meets up with them, her plain black dress showing off her elegance while also showing zero emotions. Enid wears a black dress but slightly frilly around the edges. They all sit down watching the water. Issei speaks up, his voice slightly annoyed but also with a hint of weariness. "Issei, turns out we actually have a family in this world. Me and Marinette are twins. On our way to Nevermore to sign up for next year, so yeah, it turns out. Where are you younger than you?" Marinette's voice slightly annoyed. "Marinette, and we have to somehow figure out a cover story how we know each other when our parents know we don't even know each other and our personalities are practically the same." After a few hours they head back to Neverwalk. Wednesday's parents look at Beatrix and Eri walking next to Wednesday. Morticia raises a slight eyebrow. Pale white skin, hurts very slim body, wearing a form-fitting full-body black dress that spreads out like spider's legs across the floor. She glides across the floor, her legs not even moving as she stands right in front of Beatrix and Wednesday. She crosses her arms and it looks down at Beatrix. Morticia speaks up, her voice slightly curious. "Morticia, it is a pleasure to meet you." Wednesday speaks, her voice slightly annoyed. "Wednesday, mother, this is my girlfriend Beatrix Nightmare. And her adopted daughter Eri Nightmare." Morticia just raises her eyebrows slightly higher before holding her hand out. Morticia, well, it's nice to meet the newest members of the Addams family. I'm Morticia Addams, head of the Addams family. Beatrix raises an eyebrow. Beatrix, I see can smell you're missing half of your body. Morticia has a slight look of curiosity in her eyes when Beatrix mentions that Beatrix gets introduced to the rest of the Addams family. When they get to Pugsley, when they speaks, her tone of full of this stain like somebody she has to tolerate, but with murder and drop of a hat. Wednesday, this is my brother Pugsley. Beatrix out of pure reflex punches Pugsley square in the face, knocking him out and breaking his nose. Beatrix, that was a satisfying crunch. Wednesday's face gets a slight twitch into a small smile, barely noticeable. Beatrix picks it up and leaned her backwards before kissing her passionately, airy, instinctively covering her eyes. Enid watches the interaction in the corner of her eyes and she likes out light growl that only she can hear. She then puts a finger on her throat in surprise. Eventually Wednesday pulls back from Beatrix. Enid feels her own heart silently twisting at the sight of Wednesday and Beatrix. A few days later, Beatrix is on her way to the Addams household. Nevermore has been shut down till further notice and Enid has decided on going silent for a few months so she can get used to her werewolf side. Eventually Alfred pulls the old-fashioned limo to an old Gothic house that has seen better days. When they pull up outside of the Addams house, Beatrix steps out followed by airy. Morticia stands in front of the door, her presence slightly intimidating to Miles but seems like a casual glance to Beatrix. Alfred drops them off before leaving the suitcases to one side. When they enter they see a bunch of stuff from every point in time. They continue to walk down the halls till eventually getting to a door.